Today's episode is brought to you by Beyond Finance. Beyond Finance is on a mission to help everyday Americans escape the endless cycle of crippling debt and step into a brighter future. Through compassionate, individualized care, they work with clients who have unsustainable debt levels, negotiating with their creditors to reduce their balances to reasonable amounts so that they can reset their relationship with the financial system. The Beyond Finance team is hiring accredited financial counselors to provide clients with one-on-one virtual financial counseling sessions in the areas of budgeting, credit building, and creating a values-driven action plan. Positions are remote, offer flexible schedules, and require an AFC. You'll also receive training unique to areas of debt resolution and financial therapy. If you want to learn more, visit careercenter.afcpe.org or find the direct link in our show notes. Welcome to Real Money, Real Experts, a podcast where leading financial counseling and coaching experts share their stories, their challenges, and their advice for helping people manage money in the real world. I'm your host, Rachel DeLeon, Executive Director of the Association for Financial Counseling and Planning Education, or AFCPE.
And I'm your co-host, Dr. Mary Bell Carlson, an accredited financial counselor, or AFC, and the president of Financial Behavior Keynote Group. Every episode, we're taking a deep dive in the topics that personal finance professionals care about, helping clients, building community, and your professional growth. Dr. Erika Rasure is an accomplished financial therapist and deep transformational coach. She is the chair of the research board for the Financial Therapy Clinical Institution and is a member of the financial review boards for Investopedia, The Balance, Very Well Family, and Very Well Parents. Notably, she is a client financial therapist for Beyond Finance, a first of its kind role in the debt resolution industry. As an educator and researcher, she is internationally recognized as one of the most influential female personal finance and financial therapy experts in the world. For 15 years, she's offered financial therapy, coaching, planning solutions, educational planning, and educational programming, CX research, and training services to individuals, financial advisors, and executive level management, and stakeholders of organizations looking to improve their financial wellness. She is also the founder of Crypto Goddess, a private members-only community created to educate, inspire, nurture, and connect women who are intrigued by the cryptoverse and want to learn what it's going to take to master their personal finances, careers, and relationships now and in the future. Fun fact, she recently was married on April 14th and has a beautiful blended family of 4 kids, 3 dogs, and 1 cat. That is a lot. Welcome, Erika, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a lot, but it's good. It's awesome.
One of our favorite ways to get to know our guests is to ask about their origin story into the personal finance profession. And so can you take us back and tell us a little bit about how you found your way to financial therapy?
Yeah, I completely bombed the LSAT, the test to get into law school. So, I started off as an undergrad really thinking I wanted to become an attorney. My dad died when I was 13. He had multiple sclerosis, and he was a veteran of the United States Air Force. And I grew up in a house where we did talk about money. And, it was kind of nice from that perspective because I knew at a very young age what the term guaranteed insurability was. And the fact of the matter remains is that had my dad been diagnosed and not been in the military, he would have died without life insurance. And so, I really wanted to become a lawyer to, help people with estate planning and all of that. And then I started getting into it as an undergrad, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I love this. And so I didn't really study for the LSAT. I kind of, wandered around lost for a little bit. At the time, I also had a part-time job as a radio DJ, and I loved that, but I really was kind of wandering around aimlessly. So I didn't study for the LSAT. And that was kind of my indicator. I knew the score was going to be bad. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to find something else. And I was going to school in Columbia, Missouri. And so I was looking at programs at Mizzou, and I came across the personal financial planning department. And I was like, wow, this is incredible. And so Dr. Deanna Sharp at the time was the graduate studies director. So I emailed her and I said, hey, this is where I'm at. This is intriguing. And I went and talked to her. And that's what really led me on the path into personal financial planning. So that's where I started my master's.
That's one of my favorite questions because I love finding out why people are passionate about what they do. And Erika, your story is fascinating, especially how your dad has impacted your life and your profession to this day, and now how you're trying to help others.
Yeah, absolutely. It just sticks with me and it makes me smile when I think about it.
So you describe yourself as a financial therapist, but also a deep transformational coach. Tell us more about what this means and how it shares the continuum of care alongside financial planning, counseling, or therapy.
Absolutely. So this is, kind of an exciting new development in my life. As I went the trajectory of being a practitioner to a university professor for about 10 years. And last year I left the university setting and went into, financial therapy and coaching full time. I've been doing that since 2008-ish. And it's been really, really fascinating to kind of see how, financial therapy has evolved along with, the coaching and counseling practices alongside it. One of the things I think is so fascinating about the transformational piece of this, is when people are working with their finances, and obviously finances intersect with every other aspect of our lives. It's a very challenging process that requires us to really kind of discover, what's authentically ours and not just the influence of other people and other systems and institutions. And so it's really that practice, that process of allowing things to come to the surface so we can serve ourselves better in a broader capacity for self-awareness and perception. And so that's where the deep coaching process comes in to really help people integrate the meaning and purpose and direction of what wants to emerge from the real depths of their being, the actualization of their full potential as a person, as somebody who understands where they've been, where they are, where they're going, where they want to go, and really let them, you know, feel into that presence, that inner being and their authentic self as they're going into this process of hopefully, rapid growth and kind of unraveling, again, all of those things in that spirit of renewal and understanding who they are and what their purpose, value, and place is in the world as it relates to not only finances, but every other aspect of their life.
Wow, Erika, you have such a intimate discussion about money, and not just about money, but about human beings. And I have to go back and say, wait, you and I both were a political science undergrad here, and you got
Yes.
into this personal financial planning space. Walk me through, how did you go from poli-sci all the way to this very in-depth therapist role?
Oh my gosh. And I don't think I knew that about you, which is incredible because when you think about political science, what is political science at its core? It's really kind of that understanding of these, different comparative perspectives and these ideologies and processes and behavior across all kinds of
Good
groups
point.
and classes and socioeconomic economic strata. We have all of these things that it's these systems of governance, right? It's how things are done, how things are supposed to be done. And so I think what's so fascinating about that, that influence or that relationship there is that, financial planning or people's intimate financial lives are so related to how we classify ourselves and our perspectives, and especially in that realm of, I think, what's right and wrong, right? We have so many conversations about what is politically right or wrong, what's financially right or wrong, what's good and bad, and it can become very black and white. And so I think over time I've learned that I really enjoy kind of the polarity of the black and white, but it's that gray stuff in between that is super interesting.
Erika, you're also working currently as a client financial therapist at Beyond Finance. What led you from private practice into this role?
I think it's important to, kind of make that distinction here, as I'm still in private practice and I consult with Beyond Finance. I'm not an employee. But what's really interesting about my work at Beyond and how I got involved there, they reached out to me about over a year ago. And first I thought it was kind of a scam, you know, and they know this. They know that this is part of my origin story, if you will, with them. But, I think so many of us who have been involved in the financial planning and traditional financial services space, we have a certain perception, a certain bias against the debt resolution industry. And I say that in all honesty, because I think it's something that does need to be said, is that, historically, that has been a very scammy industry. And for so many of us were taught, both in the classroom and, with professional experiences, that is not a safe space for us as professionals or for clients, right? And so When they reached out to me, my antenna just kind of basically went up and I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to get involved with something like this. But at the same time, I was super intrigued because this was the first time I had even heard of somebody, really kind of at the corporate, level or industry level, and certainly that industry, wanting to integrate something like financial therapy. And so I was really interested in having a conversation. So I didn't shut it down immediately, and I was like, what's the catch here? And really, as I talked to more people in the leadership of the organization, I learned that they were very much coming from a heart-centered place, you know, and really understood the potential value of financial therapy and bringing that to their clients and the value that that could potentially bring. And so that was when that clicked for me, when I was convinced that they were they were operating from the right place. I was like, let's do this. And it's been such a humbling journey for me as a financial professional who's been, in this space for a really long time, to really have to face my own biases, my own perceptions, not only of the clients themselves, but of the industry. And again, I can only speak to my experiences at Beyond Finance specifically. I don't know what other debt resolution organizations are doing or not doing. But I can tell you that in this role, in my interactions with their clients and leadership directly, my mind has been blown with the stories I've heard, the research I've done, the research continuing to do with this amazing team over there in ways to continually help people really kind of embody and express, you know, who they are both inside and outside of their debt resolution program and get them to the place where they really want to be. And I think that has been, sometimes I feel embarrassed, about, kind of those misconceptions I had previously coming into this industry, both, on the client side and both on the, organizational side.
Being mindful, obviously, of what you can share. Has there been a story or anything in particular that's really resonated with you or affected how you may work with even people in your own practice?
Absolutely. And that's the thing. There's been so many stories, it's hard to count on one hand because I interface with clients directly, every week. And, when I first started, wanting to reach out and talk to, clients on the one-on-one level, just starting the research portion of it so we could figure out what the right, interventions would be. It was very surprising to hear some of these stories. So, the just in I've been there, like I said, just about over a year. I've met three different women who are, in their 60s, who are retired, who are single, who have been victims of love scams. It's not something we see just on Dr. Phil. It's so put in our faces, from a talk show perspective, and hearing that and hearing the emotion, the raw emotion, and understanding at a very different level, because you watch like Dr. Phil or something, you're like, man, how could these people be this dumb? Like, we can all see it, right? But when you are face to face with them and you feel that raw emotion and you see how it's not only affected their finances, but their emotional state and their ability to trust themselves, and then their ability to trust love, and that they're grieving the loss of their finances, and then they're grieving the loss of the love they were promised, and the shame and the guilt and embarrassment that comes when they're unable to share that with their family members because they are afraid of being classified as a stupid old woman. That is it's shocking. It is shocking. And that's what I've learned, from this process is everybody does have a story. We love to talk in this industry, whether it's, from the therapy side, psychology side, counseling side, oh yeah, everybody's got their money story, rah, rah, rah. And that's true. We all do.
I love the focus on bringing financial therapy to this space because I think it breaks down those elements of shame. You're able to really meet them where they are and talk through why this is not personal, that this happens to other people, and that, at the end of the day, they are worthy of finding their financial footing.
That's absolutely right. And worthiness is such a important part of this, as is that aloneness piece. The community and support behind this, I think, is something that has gone maybe slightly overlooked just because we didn't know. I didn't know that this space existed. I didn't know there was potential, to really help people in this kind of way. And again, that goes back to my own biases, my own hubris, I guess, if you will. But, those are the things that we learn. And this is what excites me so much about working with Beyond Finance is the fact that we're able to bring this back, to the FTA, to AFCPE, to the academic, framework of this and say, hey, we're learning stuff here. How can we learn from this? And as practitioners and academics, really move forward and do something really cool with it in a place that we weren't really looking.
Erika, one of the things I love about the story is recognizing myself and how quickly we can judge from an outsider's view, right? And
Yes.
as financial planners, we are like, of course you should know about this, or financial counselors,
Right.
or whatever our role may be, or even just couch potato experts.
Right. I like that.
And it's so true of how a story and how it's not just a story. It's money stories, and that is multiple because we're constantly changing and evolving. And maybe, what if each one of us had been judged on one stupid decision that we made in our lives? And how dare we judge someone else for a silly decision they made unaware, and yet it will tarnish them for the rest of their life, right? And so that's what I think I heard when you shared that story is, as an outsider to anyone's situation, money or not involved, how often we could step back and, instead of throwing judgment, offer empathy as a differentiator.
Absolutely. I mean, you hit the you hit the nail on the head there, and I feel like there's this element of voyeurism, right? I mentioned
Oh,
Dr. Phil
totally.
or, any sort of reality TV. We are on the outside looking in, and we are very quick to judge, and it's kind of fun to judge, right? Like, there's all that research out there. We get so much excitement from that voyeurism until you are actually seeing it and the effects it has in real life. Real life is not reality TV. It's not scripted. And we have a tendency, I think, as human beings to want to live by some sort of script. And this is a theme I've seen in my work with the clients at Beyond Finance is they've created a script for themselves, but they've also created a script that is rooted in non-reality. But they're taking it as their own. They're taking ownership. And I think this is something so fascinating, is that they're taking ownership not only for their own missteps or their own challenges or their own mistakes, but also I see that they're taking responsibility for the stuff that they can't control. And I find that a fascinating part of this piece too.
Erika, it's amazing to listen to you and hear all of the skills and the theories that you're using in helping with clients. But I can imagine, as a counselor, I'm sitting there going, I want to be like Erika. I don't know how. So how do counselors utilize therapy in their own practices without becoming a therapist or a researcher?
I think what it really starts, and kind of ends with is just the willingness to be curious and the willingness to understand, or really kind of empathize a little bit with what's going on, by trying to figure out, how our clients' lives will be different, when things change for them, whether, they're getting better with their, general financial money management, or if they've, worked on healing some financial trauma. I think the end goal is the same, is that we want to, help them move forward in a practical, a sustainable way that has meaningful results for them. And I think for any client, no matter what discipline they're in, that meaningful result is going to, vary. Results are going to vary. And I think it's really a tuning into what is important to that client and really trying to help the client get to a really strong sense of self in that process of what is meaningful to them. What are the money stories, the money scripts that they've kept for themselves? What is the range of their financial values, and how is that informing, what they're doing with their money on the daily? And being able to kind of parse those things down and figure out, serves the client, what no longer does. What is it that they've inherited? What is it that they've been given? Do those things still make sense? Do those things still serve them? And being able to help them just navigate that process and, understand that they're not alone in that. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think there's strength and support. And in any way you can be a support to a person, it really helps them take back possession of their power. And I think that's just something that is so powerful, across all disciplines that we're all strong in. And, being able to take things, from here or there, even if you don't want to fully, go into the therapy space, especially if you don't feel equipped to do so, There are those empathy pieces, those deeply connective human behavior pieces that we are all connected by, and I think just appealing to everybody's humanity is a really key part of this, by helping people find the voice and being somebody who's willing to do the work on behalf of somebody and helping them find their voice.
I love that, Erika. It's as simple as listening to someone. It's really learning how to be a friend to someone and empathizing and being with them through hard things.
Yes, absolutely. And there's so many different types of listening out there. There's, however you want to call it, we can listen for readiness. I think that is something that I think is so key, is when you sense the readiness in somebody to make a change. That can be done with anybody, no matter what stage a person is at, right? If there's some readiness, that means that they're ready to explore a completely new way of being. This is your opportunity to say, all right, I'm hearing you say that you're ready to do something different. And so it's posing the question to your client is, who are you choosing to be? And then you can even take them a little bit further, and that transformational piece is really getting to that driving question of, who are you? Who am I? And it's creating a space that energizes that shift in being instead of doing. And both are fine, both are wonderful. And again, it's that continuum of care. And that's something, that all of these things can do together and can be very healing for a client anywhere on that continuum.
Erika, at the end of all of our interviews, we like to ask our guests to share their 2 cents. If you had one piece of advice to leave with our listeners today, what would it be?
The greatest gift we can give our clients and those we work with is really providing that space where they can find the presence of the feeling that they are not alone. We're just not alone. We're all connected as a human race. And I think that is something we can all take with us and use to propel us forward as we let go of the things that just no longer work for us.
Erika, thank you. It's been a delight to have you on the show today. Please tell our listeners where they can connect with you.
LinkedIn/Erika Rasure is the best place to find me.
Thanks, Erika.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Mary, it was really great having Erika on the show today. I really loved some of the stories she shared about the clients that she's working with, not in her private practice, but in some of her work with Beyond Finance. And she really comes from this heart-centered place in her interactions with clients. I loved our conversation around the importance of worthiness and helping all people find their financial footing, and really sort of that advice she spoke to at the end in terms of just the willingness as financial professionals to be curious, to meet people where they are, and to be listening. And that really interesting idea of listening for readiness. So what a really interesting conversation we had today.
She was so personal. I mean, I love the fact that she shared her personal story of how that impacted her and how that transformed her to become a transformational coach and help other people change. That to me is so impactful, as well as it's just fun sometimes to listen to people. And she is definitely one that I could sit at her feet and just listen for hours about how she empathizes with people. You can hear it in her voice and how she talks and asks questions, that she's really, truly invested in that individual that she's in the room with, of wanting to help them wherever they're at. And the best way is how she summed it up at the end. So often I think as professionals, we're thinking the client's expecting us to come with some great magic solution to their problem. But Erika answered it. The solution is being an empathetic listener. And the more we become better listeners and show more empathy, the more those clients will change, and they will feel heard. They will feel loved. They will feel cared for. Like that was what they were looking for. They just needed to feel loved, and it became a scam. And so by showing that to others can really help them in so many ways, is showing that you care enough to listen.
And for all of you who are listening, leave us a rating and review. If you want to be on the show, our guest form is on our website, so fill that out. And we have lots of great episodes ahead this season. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.